Russia-Ukraine war live, U.S. military reportedly conducting hacking operations for Ukraine. Russia-Ukraine war has entered day 98 with the EU announcing the ban on more than two-thirds of Moscow's oil imports as the conflict continues to stir a global response. A French journalist was killed in Ukraine's Luhansk, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Frederick Leclerc-Kimhoff was the 32nd media personnel who was killed in the Moscow-Kyiv war. U.S. military conducting hacking operations for Ukraine. U.S. military hackers have conducted a series of operations in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, head of U.S. Cyber Command, General Paul Nakasone told Sky News. Nakasone said, "We've conducted a series of operations across the full spectrum, offensive, defensive, and information operation." The latter added that the activities were lawful, and were carried out with civilian oversight of the military by the Defense Department in adherence to all existing policies. Kremlin plans to integrate occupied Ukrainian areas into Russia. Russia is planning to integrate Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine into the Russian Federation, state media outlet RIA Novosti reported, quoting Sergei Tsekov, a member of the Federation. The referendums may be held this year in Kherson and Zaporizhia, he said. "I think that all the territories controlled by Russia have a very good chance of being reunited with the Russian Federation. These are originally Russian territories," Sekov added. Switzerland blocks Denmark request to supply Ukraine with Piranha 3. Swiss government has blocked Denmark's request to supply Swiss-made armored vehicles to Ukraine. Danish government had proposed to hand over about 20 units of its Piranha 3 combat vehicle fleet to Ukraine as military aid. Switzerland's State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO, said that they had not agreed to the request for Denmark in line with neutrality and the War Material Act. Earlier in April, SECO did not allow Germany to provide ammunition for the Gepard tank to Ukraine. However, the government is facing pressure to review its policy of not allowing countries to provide military equipment to Ukraine. Kremlin indicates Putin and Zelensky meeting possible. Kremlin has said on Wednesday that a meeting between presidents of Russia and Ukraine is possible only to finalize a certain document, but the work on it has long been. No one has ruled out such a meeting, but it must be prepared. Presidents Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky meeting solely to finalize a certain document makes, but development on the document was put on hold a long time ago and hasn't been resumed yet, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters, as per the TASS news agency. Turkey did not get concrete proposal for Sweden, Finland's NATO bid. Turkey did not receive any concrete proposal that addresses its concerns about Finland and Sweden's NATO bid, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said on Wednesday at the parliament. Turkey had needed a sincere approach from the two Nordic countries, and Ankara will not change its view unless a concrete proposal is presented that highlights all the concerns voiced, said Erdogan. The objections raised by Ankara were not opportunism, said Turkish leader, but a matter of national security. Poland PM says EU will serve as economic hub to Ukraine. Poland's Prime Minister says the European Union member country will serve as an economic hub for neighboring Ukraine, helping it export grain and other products while Russia blocks Ukraine's export routes, chiefly its Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki spoke Wednesday in the Ukrainian town of Bordyanka, near Kyiv. Morawiecki was in the heavily damaged settlement to inaugurate a series of container houses for homeless residents that was funded by Poland. Morawiecki said Poland is working on expanding its infrastructure and capacity to facilitate the export of millions of tons of Ukrainian grain and other agriculture products. Poland is receiving EU funds for the purpose, Morawiecki said. He stressed that North Africa's countries rely heavily on Ukraine grain and could face problems feeding their populations without it. Portugal sends 146 Marines to join NATO force. Portugal has sent 146 Marines to join a NATO force stationed in Lithuania as part of efforts to bolster the alliance's eastern flank in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The deployment includes divers specializing in deactivating mines and other explosive devices. Portugal's defense ministry said the aim of the mission is to support high levels of readiness and discourage direct or indirect threats against NATO members, especially in the Baltic Sea region. The detachment, which departed Wednesday, is to remain in Lithuania for 3 months. Russia brings its Air Force, Ka-52 helicopters to launch attack on Donetsk. Russia's military units have deployed its air force to focus on the efforts of conducting offensive operations on the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine. In order to deplete the personnel and military equipment of the Ukraine troops, Russia's military has launched intense firing along the line of contact from mortars, artillery, and MLRS, General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine informed. In Slavyansk, Russia's armed forces have once again concentrated its troops, as well as redeployed a battalion tactical group in the village of Kupiansk, Kharkiv Oblast. Russia's troops bomb Bilapilya, Sumy from Su-35 fighter jet. Russia's Air Force has bombed Ukraine's Bilapilya, Sumy region from Su-35 aircraft, causing artillery fire that damaged the area of Seredina Buda locality. In an update, General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said that Russian troops have rigorously intensified assault operations from multiple fronts in the northern, southern, and eastern districts of the town of Suborodin and Volyn and Polisiu directions. The units of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Belarus continue to strengthen the protection of the Ukrainian-Belarusian border in Brest and Gomel regions. General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said on June Russian troops held strategic positions in city of Sloboshansky and launched fire from rocket and tube artillery on Alexandriivka, Slatin, and Zhirkuni. Ukraine losing up to 100 soldiers every day, laments Zelensky. Ukraine is losing up to 100 soldiers every day, President Volodymyr Zelensky said, adding that the situation remains very difficult in the eastern Don. In an interview with the American broadcaster Newsmax, Zelensky said that the fighting has intensified in mainly Severodonetsk and Lysychansk region. If Severodonetsk is entirely captured, it will be one of the biggest victories for Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. The situation in the east is very difficult. We are losing 60 to 100 soldiers every day and there are around 500 wounded in action, so we are holding our defensive perimeters, said Zelensky. Russian military pushes into city center of Severodonetsk to capture it. Russian forces are pushing into the city center of Severodonetsk, a city in Ukraine's Luhansk region, making an effort to capture it. If the attempts of taking control of the center succeed, Russian troops will have a major victory in the eastern Ukraine. Russia's soldiers are pushing closer to the town center, the British Defense Ministry said in its intelligence update. Severodonetsk is at the epicenter of the confrontation, Ukrainian President Zelensky said. Putin spokesman accuses US of pouring oil on the fire. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov strongly reacted to President Joe Biden's agreement of sending the long-range rocket systems to Ukraine's Putin spokesperson said that US is escalating the risk of a direct confrontation. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov meanwhile accused the United States of adding fuel to the fire, adding that Russia does not trust that Kyiv will not to fire the weapons into. We believe that the US is deliberately pouring oil on the fire. The US is obviously holding the line that it will fight Russia to the last Ukrainian, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said. US sending HIMARS to Kyiv would be dangerous, Russia warns. Russia on Wednesday responded to President Biden's announcement that he was sending advanced long-range rocket systems HIMARS to Ukraine. The move, said Moscow, would be viewed extremely negatively and could be dangerous, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov told state media. Russia also started nuclear drills with Yars, an intercontinental ballistic missile, and about 1,000 military soldiers in the northeast of Moscow. Pope Francis indirectly urges Russia not to use grain supplies as weapon. Without naming Russia, Pope Francis has indirectly urged it not to use grain supplies as a weapon amid its ongoing war against Ukraine. The blockage of grain exports from Ukraine, on which the lives of millions of people depend, is especially alarming, he stated, as per the Kyiv Independent. Ukraine claims Russia lost nearly 30,700 soldiers since onset of war. In its latest operational update, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry claimed that Russia has lost nearly 30,700 soldiers, 3,343 armored personnel vehicles, APV, 1,361 tanks, 659 artillery systems and 207 multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, and at least. In addition, the invaders also lost as many as 2,290 vehicles and fuel tanks, 519 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV, 208 aircraft, 175 helicopters, 120 cruise missiles, and 49 special equipment and 13 boats, the Ukrainian Defense